Now that the provost is here, we can get started. Good evening. My name is Shannon O'Brien. I'm the dean at the Missoula College, and I am delighted and honored to have this time to share with you and our panelists. The discussion topic for this session is preparing a competitive workforce. Education and workforce alignment are critical. It's a critical strategy for developing and maintaining a strong economy. This morning, we heard from our keynote speakers the concept of both and, of both preparing our students for a professional life, a meaningful professional life, as well as preparing them to be engaged citizens in a democracy so that our democracy is effective. The focus on this session will be more on the workforce piece. And in many ways, I would invite you to be thinking through I'd like to plant the seed for our presentation, our keynote tomorrow morning. The U.S. Secretary of Labor, Tom Perez, will be with us, which is an exciting honor. And he'll be speaking, the title of his presentation, Education as the Great Equalizer, Partnering to Prepare a Competitive Workforce for the 21st Century. And I'd like you to be thinking of potential thoughts or questions you may have for the Secretary. Before I go any further, I would like to introduce our really outstanding collection of statewide, certainly university-wide, community-wide, statewide, and nationally. We have a collection of leaders before you who I'm really honored to be able to have this opportunity to have this conversation. Starting at the far end, Leonid Kalachev is part of our Department of Mathematics. He's served as chair and he's a full professor. He earned a master's degree and a PhD from Lomonosov Moscow State University in applied mathematics, theoretical and mathematical physics. He also has studied and he served as a visiting professor at Toyo University in Japan and was a visiting researcher in the Department of Mathematical Sciences at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, at the University of Washington, and as well at Moscow State University in Russia. He has extensive experience in STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, and engaging in private-public partnerships and initiatives. So it's wonderful to have you here. And next to Dr. Kalachev is Reed Humphrey. Dr. Humphrey is Dean of the College of Health Professions and Biomedical Sciences here at the University of Montana. He has a BS and PhD degrees from the University of Pittsburgh, a master's degree from Wake Forest University, and he decided he needed another master's degree to add to those in physical therapy from Virginia Commonwealth University's Medical College of Virginia. He taught there for 10 years and collectively has 35 years of clinical and research experience in the exercise assessment and treatment of patients with cardiopulmonary and metabolic disease. He is the only physical therapist to be recognized by the American Association of Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehabilitation with its Award of Excellence, which is the highest award conferred by the association. He has served in numerous leadership roles as U.S. delegate and head, as president and chairs of associations, the World Council for Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehabilitation, American Association of Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Rehabilitation, and the American College of Sports Medicine. He serves as an exercise science content expert for ABC Medical News, and he was a founder of Idaho on the Move and served as the statewide chair. And the list goes on, but I'm leaving us with that. Next, we have Mr. Larry Simkins, who has been president of the Washington Companies since 2001. As president and CEO, Mr. Simkins provides leadership and direction to the enterprise by serving as a member of the board of directors for each individual company. Based in Missoula, Montana, the Washington Companies are an international group of privately owned companies and selected public company investments employing over 7,500 people worldwide. Business is transacted in the sectors of rail transportation, marine transportation, shipyards, mining, environmental construction, heavy equipment sales, and aviation products. Since joining the Washington Companies in 1988, Larry has been involved in operations on various individual companies. He's a graduate of the University of Montana and currently serves as a director of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis and co-chairs Governor Bullock's Main Street Montana project. Earlier this year, he was awarded the Distinguished Eagle Scout Award. That was here on campus? Yeah. And lastly, we have Commissioner Pam Bucy, who of the Montana Department of Labor and Industry. Upon graduating from law school here at the University of Montana, Bucy was hired as a criminal prosecutor with the Lewis and Clark County Attorney's Office. She went on to work as executive assistant to the Attorney General under former Attorney General and current Supreme Court Chief Justice Mike McGrath, where she created the Office of Consumer Protection. She left her post at the Attorney General's office after 7 years to take a job with Montana's Department of Labor and Industry. She began as chief counsel for the department before being appointed commissioner by Governor Steve Bullock in 2013. Commissioner Bucy has previously served on several boards, including State Bar of Montana and Montana Legal Services Association. Bucy is also the recipient of several awards, including the State Bar of Montana's Distinguished Service Award and Governor's Award for Excellence. She received her bachelor's degree from Rocky Mountain College. An impressive group of people we have before us, if I may say. The essential purpose of us being here is to look at and have conversation around the marriage between education and the economy, and with the fundamental purpose of ensuring employment and meaningful jobs for our students and a thriving economy. And the questions that we pose to our panelists are as follows, and I will read all of the questions and then give each of the panelists the opportunity to respond to them. And then we will have time at the end for questions. We will encourage questions from the audience. So the questions we ask of you are, first, what are ways in which public-private partnerships might be employed to ensure that our graduates have the tools, including soft skills, that they need to go straight into the workforce? Additionally, how do we minimize the traditional silos of government at the federal, state, and local levels, the education system, and industry-related organizations? And how can we strengthen those connections? And lastly, what are collaborative opportunities involving industry-recognized credentials, apprenticeships, internships, certificates, and degrees? And we will start with Commissioner Bucy.
Great. Thank you. I think in Montana right now we are poised to engage in some of the best collaboration that certainly I've heard about, but what I'm hearing from both my colleagues at the university system and businesses that I'm talking to. And that's really in the area of apprenticeship or on-the-job training. Right now, I'm sure that you all hear it as much as I do, but it's very easy to complain that either we're not giving businesses the employees they want, in that they don't have the soft skills, and that they don't know how to dress, they don't know how to show up on time, or they don't have the hard skills to do the jobs that they're asking for. I think it's a more anecdotal complaint, and it doesn't pan out quite as much when you get to the specifics. But I do think the opportunities to really collaborate on meaningful, on-the-job kinds of training, and I really do want to put this in the context of the economy. We're very lucky in Montana. The economy is great. You know, our job growth is great. Our unemployment is low. But we do have a very significant challenge that we face over the next decade. And that is that we have about 130,000 people that are going to retire in the next decade, baby boomers who certainly deserve to retire, who have stayed in the workforce longer than I think most of them plan to. But we have 123,000 16 to 24-year-olds to fill those slots. And we're projecting, both nationally and our state economists are projecting, about 6,500 jobs a year growth over the next decade. So no matter how you look at it, the math just does not add up. We do not have enough human beings to fill the jobs. And that is unique. Not every state faces that problem. Every state faces a skills gap. Not every state actually faces a worker shortage. So we really do need to make our training programs and our education faster and more immediately relevant. And the easiest and the most successful and longest running method of doing that is on-the-job training or apprenticeship. So I think in Montana, when you look at the two significant grants that we have received, $40 million in the Rev Up and Healthcare Montana grants, both of those have components that are focusing on apprenticeship, and they are really starting to come into fruition. We're doing some really exciting things with two-year colleges around the state. Marcus Daly Hospital just took on their first phlebotomy apprentice. We have industrial sewing going on in the Flathead. We have oil and gas work going on in eastern Montana. But all of those are collaboration with the higher ed system. So it's higher ed providing some soft skills and some critical thinking skills, but it's businesses really stepping up and providing the specific needs with the specific technology and the specific training to their very specific needs. So it does very much speed up the training process, make it less expensive, and I think much more relevant to the private sector. So I'm very excited about that. It's what I am certainly talking about, and when I am talking to Montana's business community, it's what they are incredibly excited about hearing about.
Okay. So when I was getting ready, I started to think about how to address each question specifically. And ironically, let me tell you about my last week. And I think last week just demonstrates how quickly things change in the workforce. So I think the key about how we collaborate and ensure that students get, the tools that they need, I think the thing is for everybody in this room to get out of the office, just like I did last week. Last week I rode a locomotive for one day. We went up to Thompson Falls. I went up to our shipyard in Vancouver, where we're going to be hiring. We've got 200 and some people there now. We're going to be hiring over 1,000 people. I was in our marine operation in British Columbia. Came back, actually went into the mine in Butte. I attended several employee meetings, and it is really remarkable when you see what's going on in the field. Two things kind of stood out. One of them was at our employee meetings, how young all our employees are, the new people that we've got, how focused they were, how articulate they were. It's an incredible environment to be in. And you think about places like Montana Resources, where we're about to approach 5 million hours of safe operation in a mine, which is remarkable. You only do that with smart people that are adapting the best technology and are learning day after day what to do next. The other thing is how every job has changed within the last 12 months. I mean, whether it's adopting a new technique in the mine, some new safety procedure that we've got, and I'll talk about a little bit more when we get to the shipyard about some of the advanced tools that we're using that are changing it. But two things stand out. Number one, everybody has to have the ability to adapt and learn. The jobs are changing. You have to know how to change and how to be able to learn. And the other thing is the ability to communicate, and being able to communicate in a concise way that they have the ability to be productive. So I deal with these businesses every single day. And to get out in the field and see what's going on, it's incredible what I learn in a day and how quickly it changes. So I think being able to see how quickly it adapts and what businesses need means you actually need to get out there and see it. So when we talk about the traditional silos in government and education system and industry, how to break some of those down, I think it's really simple. It's building trust through relationships, just like anything else, whether it's in your business or home or wherever it might be. I've been incredibly fortunate to work on 2 major projects in the state. One of them is the Main Street Montana project, and the other one is the 6 mill levy. And so what happened in both situations is they both, number one, took more time than I ever thought they would. But number 2, it was an incredibly rich opportunity for me to develop relationships with a lot of different people on both sides of the aisle, in the state, in industry, in education. And those are relationships that continue to carry on. And so I understand that, you know, the political cycle has a cycle to it, and that's sometimes different than what the long-term outlook is for a business like ours. However, I mean, I didn't meet Pam by making an appointment to the Commissioner of Labor and going and sitting down with Pam and talking to her in a formalized environment, or her coming to my office. I met Pam by walking around in the shipyard talking about the raft trip that happened last weekend and talking about different things that we both might be interested in. Oh, by the way, in the Main Street project, we might have had a problem or 2 along the way that we had to get on the phone and figure out together. So it's not all about a formal meeting in a formal environment or being invited to something in order to interact with Pam. I think it's finding those opportunities out there to meet people, work with people in different situations, and forge a relationship that's deeper than just the commissioner and industry. The Federal Reserve Bank is another one that has provided me just an incredible opportunity to see all different things, including one of the most remarkable things that I saw was their involvement in early childhood education. I was scared to death when I went there. Macroeconomics is not my strength. And to see that they were talking about early childhood education and the things that they're studying gives you a perspective on how important education is, you know, at all levels. And, you know, it just helps open your eyes. So any opportunity to see those types of things along the way. The other thing I miss about the Main Street Montana project is having people like Annie Glover tell me that I would have worn nicer socks today, that it would have been a lot more interesting. So she was the one that kept me on my toes during the entire project, so it's good to see her again here today. But how do we strengthen those connections? Like I said, I think it's the Main Street Montana project. I think it's not just that, it's the food bank, it's wherever there's an opportunity outside of a formal environment to meet and interact with people only helps to be able to do it. I don't need a formal invitation to interact or to have a large audience to become engaged. I mentor a lot of businesses, several people, and in fact, there was a guy in my office last Friday, picked up the phone, said, I saw your thing on LinkedIn, I'd like to come in and talk to you. I had no idea who he was. I spent 45 minutes with him, and it's incredibly valuable for me, but I hope it was invaluable for him as well. But my point is, I think it takes a lot of courage for people to reach out in an environment you're not necessarily comfortable in to talk about these things. And the more people do it, I think the lot easier it is. I'm sure today you didn't have anybody turn you down for the panel. I mean, it's one of those things that if you ask people, I'm sure they're glad to engage with the right opportunities. So creating those opportunities, I think, for a continuous dialogue is important. And then collaborative opportunities. Let me go back to last week again, some things that happened. So remember, I was out in the field all week, and then on Friday, we had some representatives from Congressman Zinke's office in our office talking a little bit. And one of the questions came up that said, what would you consider the best college degree? And I had to think about it, but I really couldn't, nothing really came to mind instantly other than the value of an education that ultimately culminates in the ability to learn and adapt and the ability to communicate. And so I didn't have anything specific, but I'll tell you, after a week in the field, my gut was welding. And that was the first thing I said. So I think as things evolve, even that, I said I would come back to welding in our shipyard. You know, the traditional way, even 24 months ago, of welding and leaning over and welding a piece of steel, we've got all state-of-the-art equipment in our world-class shipyard. Everything from the way you stand and doing it head-on rather than doing it on the floor is completely different. So everybody that's been welding there for decades is now doing something completely that they did before. The other one is, a good example is Modern Machinery. So Modern Machinery is one of the largest Komatsu dealers in the Pacific Northwest and in Russia. We've gone up to MSU Northern and worked with Chancellor Kegel on that entire program up there because, for selfish reasons, we desperately need mechanics and we desperately need welders from Northern Montana College. And so giving them a check for their new building, that was the really easy part. What's happened is we've spent lots of trips with our management going to Northern, working with Greg on everything from curriculum to helping them do their fundraising, because it's a lot easier for us to go with them to go see somebody like a GE or a Burlington Northern than it is for them to go by themselves. So we've become really engaged in it, and for selfish reasons, once again, because we need trained mechanics and welders. So that's, I think, a really good example of a specific program. So that's all I got.
Well, thank you, Larry. And I'm happy to report on behalf of Missoula College that we have opened up another section of welders, because that is the word on the street. So Pam laid out kind of a great description of the lay of the land, if you will, of the labor market, and Larry gave a great kind of illustration of and I liked what you had to say about getting out and seeing, and I think we all benefit from that when we can get out of our offices and get out of our own world so that we can make those connections. And now Reed will share with us some of his expertise in the healthcare field in particular,
Sure.
and connecting what the two of you have laid out as far as from the education perspective.
Sure, happy to, and thank you for the opportunity. So, in many respects, one might say I've got the greatest number of opportunities because healthcare is one of the sort of recession-proof, if you will, in many respects, industries. You know, Montana has the, healthcare accounts for the greatest sector of Montana jobs, some 67,000 in 2014. It grows at a robust rate of about nearly 3% per year. Even in the recession years, it was growing nearly at 2% per year. And as Pam pointed out, we have an extraordinary number of baby boomers retiring. I'm not one of them, actually. I'm working forever. I just want Perry and Royce to know that. But it creates an extraordinary challenge for us because, I'm dean of a college of health professions, so we have mostly post-baccalaureate programs from physical therapy to public health and pharmacy practice and the like, and yet in Missoula College, rising like a phoenix across the way, is the home for a broad array of two-year programs, and we're going to be working very diligently over the course of the next decade to build 2+2 programs and find pathways for individuals who are interested in healthcare to enter more comfortably, more seamlessly, and progress to their level, the level at which they wish to practice at the top of their license. The Montana Healthcare grant that is in play right now, led by Kay Norris, who's sitting right over there, is designed to connect, some 15 institutions and 4 tribal colleges together to create a more seamless pathway for healthcare practitioners. The challenges we face, of course, in Montana is filling the available positions, but more importantly, retaining individuals in Montana. This is the average wage for healthcare workers in Montana is reasonable. However, we consistently face challenges as we prepare graduates, and they incur a debt, because actually many of these programs are 3-year post-baccalaureate programs. There is a tendency for migration out of state, but they always want to come back to Montana. And I think that one of the challenges I hope that we can overcome, and I see it as a significant opportunity, is our ability to create public-private partnerships that bring Montana graduates immediately into the healthcare workforce. The vast majority of our graduates are working. 75% are actually employed in Montana within a year. Most of our graduates are employed before they actually graduate. But the real key is being able to develop robust public-private partnerships that provide for a greater degree of scholarships on the front end, loan forgiveness on the back end, so that we can keep Montanans in Montana. It's one of our great challenges. Other challenges really are how we expand our workforce in healthcare. At this time, we still don't graduate enough practitioners to fill the need. And sometimes there's a criticism out there that, well, perhaps you're holding the workforce down to create broader opportunities, which is kind of an insane position to take. We have our own accreditation guidelines that limit our growth, but we're trying to grow, and we will grow. The enrollment in the health professions has really been quite robust, and I think that we have a history. We do have a history on the silo issue. We have a history of creating siloed health professions, physical therapists and social workers and public health workers. However, healthcare is a bit of a turn in the freighter as well right now. Healthcare has been focused on interventions and fee-for-service. The advent, finally, I think, I got my fingers crossed, my legs crossed too, that the advent of accountable care organizations, where healthcare organizations are funded by keeping people well, is an extraordinary freighter turn. I know President St. Patrick has entered an agreement with St. V's and Billings to become an accountable care organization. This is a great opportunity for the university and for others in the healthcare network to help them turn that freighter, to change the paradigm of taking care of people when they become ill, to keeping people out of the hospital on the front end. That's going to be an extraordinary challenge, but a worthy challenge, I think, and creates great opportunities for public-private partnerships between the university, the hospitals, and other providers to help change the picture of healthcare in the United States, which is, as you know, increasingly a significant portion of the GNP, and we're not really keeping up with our social responsibility in that regard. So it's a great time for me as a dean is to create more robust opportunities for the university to be viewed by the healthcare providers as an active collaborator in the provision of care, in the breaking down of silos, so that we train healthcare practitioners who interact on an interprofessional level, is something that is mandated now in most accreditation documents, and something that we find to be really an attractive opportunity for us. So the future of healthcare is really quite bright. And that's not only just in Montana, but throughout the Pacific Northwest and really across the United States. It's difficult to find any category or any labor forecast that doesn't illustrate that. So I'm very excited about the future. Also very excited about this university's ability to deliver on a robust collaborative relationship in the region. So with that, maybe I'll put my microphone into mute mode.
Thank you, Reed. And if I can just add to that, the healthcare grant that Pam referred to and that Reed was referring to, it's a trade alignment. Those are both trade alignment for career and technical education and community colleges with that very thing in mind of where the need is. And now Leonid is here, and Larry, I just wanted to point out that he did get the memo of the socks from Annie, or I'm not sure who did, but I did want to make sure everyone noticed that.
This is how I live my life.
But I think that something that I have certainly noticed and worked on is the persistence. The relationships need to be built that Larry, you brought up, but Reed, you touched on it. It's a slow-moving vessel for change, but the persistence of those of consistently building those relationships and moving in the right direction. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, and which is a great investment. And Leonid has been a part of engaging private industry, and I think if we have meetings for the sake of meetings and there are no results, we get into trouble, we lose trust. So Leonid, if you can talk a little bit about the experiences that you've had in engaging private industry and bringing them to campus or recruiting members of post-secondary education to be out in private industry, that would be helpful.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this discussion, because I do have something to say. When you get tired, just tell it's time up. I think it was very important to hear an opinion of a person who is like on the ground working, an ordinary professor now. If you are a business and you want to have a qualified workforce or a new program, whom do you approach at the university? This is like a question that I would like to ask. And in fact, this is exactly what happened 4 years ago when several new high-tech businesses opened in Missoula, Montana. Several actually moved in. They advertised for positions. By Montana standards, they offered humongous salaries and couldn't find anyone to take these positions. So eventually, they did have several meetings, representatives of companies with professors. I don't know, maybe there were meetings with administrators. I was not privy to these meetings. But immediately, I was a chair back then, and I told, you know what, we absolutely must kind of start something that these companies need, that will benefit from it. So this was the start of our big data program that now is being approved by the Board of Regents. We have a big data certificate starting this September. Even before it started, in May of last year, because students already fulfilled all the requirements, 7 got certificates and immediately got jobs. But the problem that I see is that if not a chair who knows who are the best people to put in these classes, or what is the best way to train in this absolutely new area. By the way, our big data program was the first undergraduate program in the country. We ran it purely 100% on vacancy savings because there is no money available. Now, every single one of the universities in the United States has either big data program or big data center. I can tell you, our program is still unique because we were able to find the people who can teach classes that are not taught anywhere else in the world, but kind of sidestepping a little bit, we're still running it on vacancy savings. So therefore, if, for example, you approach administrator on any level, even if there is a vision, how do they know whom to engage and where to get the funds? Our hope eventually is that we will be noticed by the industry and that our graduates who are now being employed everywhere throughout the country in very big companies eventually will start writing checks to us. But this is kind of plans for the future. However, I want also to say that kind of as part of this program, everything that Larry was saying about what is needed of contemporary kind of students that enter workforce, we're already doing. So I want to attract attention to opportunities that are available right now. They are here already for like 3-4 years, and they could be scaled to whatever level. We will be happy to show any department how we do it. For example, indeed, one of the biggest problems we notice actually there are two. One is communication skills. Students do not know how to work in groups. They have no clue what the real working environment is, what is the deadline, what is the deliverable, and why they're not very keen on going to these classes. They may teach it because they're very much afraid of the grade point average. You know, when I see a student with grade point average 4, I'm very suspicious of this person. You need to know how in real life you actually fail, then you pull yourself together and move on. But you must not be afraid how this affects your grade point average. So we introduced two types of student engagement. One is projects classes in big data certificate program, where we actually invite real businesses with their problems. They present, we put students in groups, and then it's very interesting. In this group work, success is not, I mean, you do not know whether this will be a successful result or not, whether the company will be happy or not. But the students know exactly when they misunderstand the problem, when they do not communicate right, they immediately will be slapped, because the company representatives, they're tough guys. It's real life. It's not kind of everything is tender, politically correct. No, if you do not know what you're doing, they will tell you directly in your face. More than that, this is like undergraduate program. For graduate programs, we have another way of engagement. About the same time when we started big data program, we also started statistics and applied mathematics core. It's like a consulting center, but of an unusual variety. You see, for example, Montana State University completely missed the train both on big data, on consulting. We were there first. But their center is approved by Board of Regents. They have a director with the salary. We do it all for free, actually. So I told when this was approved that we will not take 1 cent either from Montana University System or from the University of Montana. If we're as good as we say we are, yeah, there will be contracts and we will pay the students. And that's exactly what's happening. And the students, graduate students who are engaged in these contracts, they really have hands-on experience. The main thing, you need to adapt. If someone asks you a question, you cannot hide behind the theorem. You actually have to give the answer. And communication skills, because you never work alone, you work with the advisee, with the company representative, with the group. You better, I mean, could be a genius, but if you cannot communicate your genius solution, I mean, it's as worth nothing. Two more comments, important. I think overall, what we do at the University of Montana, strangely enough, turned out to be at the forefront of overall new type of education, maybe in the world, for sure in the country. I'm wondering why no one notices it, because being a chair, for me, it was uphill battle, I mean, all the way, in terms of budgets, in terms of even engaging some of the faculty members who really do not want to see change. They do not want to see the need to redistribute resources towards these new directions. And therefore, I'm a little bit like hesitant about the committees, for example, at the university that try to figure out in which direction we should go. Because committees, they involve people from departments, schools, they have their own interests. I can tell you, being a chair, if they say, you need to close your program for the better good of the university and the students, well, if you say yes, you are a bad chair. So there must be really a kind of involvement of industry leaders that say, you know what, this is what we really want, we are willing to pay for it, we are willing to support this program, let us have kind of milestones. In 5 years, we see if you do not deliver, we just shut down our funding. And another last thing, we were also thinking there are a lot of new opportunities and new skills, both available but needed. How can we help in training and retraining workforce in the companies if they need it? So we came up with two interesting concepts. One is multi-topic classes. See, everyone is nowadays so very busy. No one has time to take a proper statistics sequence of 3 courses and so forth. So we actually designed a number of courses that combine several topics in one. So after 1 semester, students or employees in companies, they have this jump start that they can solve real-life hands-on problems right away. One such class is statistical dynamic and computation modeling that combines 3 disciplines in one, and in 1 semester you can actually move on, just being hired by Washington Corporation. And another thing we thought, how can we without any extra cost, deliver this not only to students who are on campus, but like all over the United States. And we came up with the idea of dual delivery courses. Professors come to class, teachers face-to-face, classes being recorded. We teach, by the way, Jim Hurston is here. He taught this way a class in math education for teachers scattered all over Montana because they do not want to drive to Missoula, but they want to get their MA degree. And we teach already for the last 5 years a similar course for students here and University College Cork. They absolutely love it. Unique course, no one can do it, so it's part of their permanent curriculum, by the way. But it is something that companies also can take advantage of because it's being taught anyway. It's zero extra cost. I mean, literally saying. We just use their opportunities to communicate that recently became available, and not to use them, from my viewpoint, is kind of strange. If you have any more questions to me later, I will be happy to answer. But thank you very much. I think I already talked too much.
Very good. We certainly heard a consistent theme of adaptability, consistent learning, and thinking outside the box. I would also venture to say listening to the needs and being able to be responsive to those needs. And then I consistently heard the communication piece as well. And before we open it up to our audience, were there any panel members that wanted to add to anything that was said here, or give a counter perspective to fire things up a little bit? Or if not, then I will open it up to our group. Does anyone have any? Yes.
Directed mostly at Pam and Larry, both of you being graduates of the institution, and both of you being involved at the state level in where labor is going, where the workforce is going, and so on, where our economy is going. I'd like you to comment, if you would, on what you see as the best overlap between what this institution does programmatically and where the state of Montana and our region needs to go in terms of workforce development and economic development opportunities. So where's the nexus between this institution and the needs of Montana and the region in your mind?
Boy, that's an interesting question. I think, as Reed was talking a little bit about, jobs in Montana and being able to adapt and see what those jobs are and be able to provide students and a workforce with those skills for those opportunities that are out there. I think the ability to adapt to what's going on in the economy is what I think the university has been good at, and I think that the programs have been developed to start to figure out what those skills are and those perspectives are in all of the disciplines that are in the economy for the state. I think that the part that needs to continue to be worked on is, like I said earlier, is just being able to see how quickly it adapts and how quickly it's changing, because it's changing constantly. And everything from the example about welding on the floor to welding standing straight up, I think that applies for every single job with, aspects of every job that is available in the workforce. So I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, Royce, but that's...
Yeah, and I guess I would just expand on that. I think that's why it's incumbent. I think we have to really engage the private sector, especially you all, but I mean, even in my own agency, we do have to say, we really need you to take an actual hands-on part of their learning, because I don't think colleges can afford, especially in those high-tech fields, I don't think colleges can afford to keep up with technology. So it's incumbent. You have to reach out to them and say, so why don't you teach them on your equipment, and we'll provide them some of those soft skills or some of that critical thinking that is necessary too. The other thing I would add that I think is really important is we have to figure out a way, both the university system and government, to increase labor force participation. So we have to reach different people, not just students coming out of high school, which we absolutely need to reach, and we need to reach at greater levels, and we need to get some, dual credits, all the really great work that's being done. We need to get more career and technical ed, more pre-apprenticeship, so that credits are transferring more seamlessly. But we also need to reach out to those underemployed folks in Montana. If we're facing a worker shortage, if we have a crunch at the retail service level, that's terrible, but it's not nearly as terrible as if Larry is having a crunch at Washington Corporation with welders, or some of those really important middle-skilled, what can lead to meaningful middle-class lives. So somehow or other, and where we are falling down, I think both at the university level and in the Department of Labor, is we're just not reaching some of those underemployed people, or women that are only working part-time. We need to get them working full-time, and we need to get them working at higher skill levels. So that's something where I think there could be some really meaningful collaboration. How do we reach those people? How do we make upping their skills affordable? How do we make it flexible so that they might be able to care for their elderly family, or care for their children, or continue to work because they can't afford to take 2 or 4 years out of working to get the essential skills that they need. So I think those are harder things to tackle, but they're not impossible. And frankly, if we don't tackle them, our economy here is not going to continue to grow in the way that it has over the past 3 or 4 years, and the way that we project that it will, if we can provide the workers necessary to do that work.
Bucy.
Thank you. Thanks. Building on that, I guess I have a very specific question. I'm hearing, this conference is about education for the 21st century, and then I'm hearing we need training. We can produce students, and we do, that are thinkers and are adaptable. They need that. Then they need to go into specific jobs. And so I guess my question is it a public-private partnership, or is the university responsible for training, or is it industry responsible for training? I mean, how do we get there?
So I really want to hear Larry talk about this. I've been having some very interesting discussion. My message to industry is, this can't just be the university's problem. This can't just be mine. We can't be responsible. And I'll give you a great example. I just had a 3-hour meeting with a very, very, very impressive software company that is wildly critical of the university's computer programming department. And so I've been on 3 panels where I heard this criticism. And so finally I just said, I'm going to go meet with them. I want to hear what it is that's happening, and where the skills gap actually is. And when I met with the VP of HR, they said, well, the university produces great script writers. They're great programmers. But what we need is the guy, and I will say they said guy, that builds computers in the basement. And I said, well, that's not a very... When I hire a programmer, and I hire a lot of programmers, I have a 1,000-person agency, I want a script writer. I mean, I want someone that's going to come in and write script. So I said, it's really not a fair criticism when what you're asking for isn't exactly, what the university would be teaching if you're really teaching programming. So what about taking what you like, if they're good programmers, what about finding an assessment that finds that person that builds computers in the basement? That's a different kind of person, maybe, than a straight-up script writer. Or what about taking from the university what they do well, the actual programming, the JavaScript writer that's perfect, and building on that, taking that good component and building on that yourself. You train the hacker, if you will. And it was very interesting, and it was literally a 3-hour conversation. They're like, well, that's different than how we recruit, that's different than how we reward performance, so we'd really have to redo things. But we do need 300 of these people, so perhaps we better think about how we're doing it. So it is a little bit about how we talk about, how the university talks about what they do, but it absolutely, in my mind, has to be a collaboration. And one other thing I will say is I think that I've enjoyed having both Larry and like Commissioner Christian with me at these business roundtables, because I do think if all of us aren't in the room together, it's really easy to blame the arm that's not there. Anecdotally, the university just doesn't do that, or, job services aren't finding the unemployed or the underemployed and getting them to us. If we're all in the room, it's a lot easier to get all the information to say where really are the gaps and what's happening. But I really don't believe that that all of this can fall on higher ed or even high schools. There has to be collaboration, or we always will be behind.
Well, yeah, I think just to build on that, I think it is, to answer your question, I think it's industry's responsibility as well as education, but we need to take a more proactive role in having that discussion. And it's not a discussion where we have a presentation today and I put up a PowerPoint and say this is where we're at. That's not going to work. It's a consistent dialogue that has to be constant and natural, because let me give you 2 examples. One of them is the railroad industry that says we need locomotive engineers. All of our data 3 years ago said that the railroad industry was going to continue to grow. There was all this momentum. Everybody's training classes were full. We were stealing engineers from each other. There was all kinds of things happening. And then it tailed off. And so now, all of a sudden, we've got too many railroad engineers. UP and Burlington Northern both laid off a whole bunch of engineers recently. Unfortunately, those are the youngest, most recent trained workers, which we all know is a problem. So if I told you 2 years ago, gosh, I need a whole bunch more railroad engineers, and then now that's not the case, there's nothing I can do. Soybeans aren't moving the way that we thought they would be, and coal's way down. There's a whole bunch. And so understanding that whole dynamic that goes along with it, rather than just this is the profile that I need trained, is something we need to have a constant dialogue about. The other thing is I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine, Ken Powell, who's the CEO of General Mills. And he was talking about the fact that he just can't get new exciting product to the market quick enough. The engineers and the scientists and the people they had internally, by the time you get it through that process, they can't get it to the market quick enough. So you know what they need? The same thing as this software engineer. They need to find those people that are inventing food products in their garage, that they're testing with their neighbors and getting instant feedback versus what you have to go through within a large company like General Mills. So their entire model is starting to change. I think everybody, whether it's software or food products or whatever, there's a change going on all the time, but that requires a constant natural dialogue versus spots of presentations along the way.
I can just speak because I'm pretty loud. Or do I need to because you're recording? Yeah. I'll go there. I can use the exercise. It feels so official. Is it on?
Leonid, could you just give her a hand?
Yes.
Leonid, can you help me? Thank you. Thank you. And actually, I think my question might dovetail well with what you just said, is that when you're talking about processes and how from the business end everything is sped up and we just need to get it to the market faster, I'm wondering if the Montana University system needs to be thinking along those same lines, and that our processes sometimes can be very slow, can be slow in terms of getting a program off the ground. And I'm in the 2-year sector, and we're we're married to the University of Montana, and they have a certain process in terms of getting a degree program through that's a 4-year program or even a graduate degree program. But we're looking at 2-year programs, and they have a certain shelf life, and the industry wants that right now, and then it takes us, you know, so long to, well, we have to get it through the faculty senate, and then we have to get it through this, and we have to get it through that. And I didn't know if from your end you ever experienced that when you asked for a program that it was too slow, and if from our end, if, you know, sometimes these are what we can perceive, but maybe they're not valid, that there are process issues on our side. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to speak to that.
This is on, so I may as well say. Do you want to say something? I can tell you one thing. It's a great example. Today we need a lot of engineers for locomotives. In 2 years we don't. But also, what I learned being a chair, it's very interesting. Chairs do not have much budget power, but they have a lot of other types of powers that can resolve this issue. Because if you feel that some program is important and has a real potential, that's what we did with big data. You can introduce experimental courses without approval for 2 years. Then either they should go off the books or be approved. The process is absolutely necessary because you must make sure that the standard is high. We are not doing something that is not professional. However, when you introduce a new program, indeed, you may or may not know whether there will be students there, whether they will be needed in 2 years. So chairs, I mean, I'm still looking from the ground level. Here is where the power is. And even administrators, if they agree to do something, they take so much responsibility on their shoulders. Sometimes they are not up for it. But the chairs can do it without any consequences. If it was a mistake, in 2 years it's gone. You move on. That's how I would say.
And if I could just add, I think embedding, as we're talking about with the 2 grants, embedding industry recognized credentials, and that is much harder in Montana because unfortunately we don't have big pockets of industry. When I go to my national meetings, you know, you go to Louisiana, there's every kind of industry recognized credential for shipbuilding or whatever it is. But nonetheless, it's still a credential. It's still a transferable credential that hopefully as education transforms, it still means something. It still means something in terms of credit. It still means something to another employer in another state where that industry might not be struggling if it doesn't work here. So I think finding programs that are shorter that can embed within some other kind of curriculum is really the answer to make education both more accessible and more affordable and quicker. Those are already done. They're out there. The industry already accepts them. And it does make it a lot faster, frankly.
And the Commissioner's Office has been working, I mean, we have a new position that's split between the Commissioner's Office, the Commissioner of Higher Education's office and the Commissioner of Labor and Industry's office to look at just that. And we've had meetings in, certainly in Missoula with Missoula College and other folks in private industry, and that's going on throughout the state to see how those can kind of merge and blend. We have had a rich conversation. Consistently, I have heard adaptability and learning and communication and thinking in unique ways and really building upon relationships. And I would like to point out the title to our gathering over these 2 days, defining a 21st century for a vibrant democracy. And as the president mentioned, as he opened the conference today, that there was a good deal of thought put into that title. And defining is the first word in there. And we are here as a part, you know, the president pulled us together for good reason. And there will, the intention is for action to be taken after this conversation, and that notes are taken at all of these sessions. And so I encourage you to to be thinking about the request that the president has for input and for perspectives about how we really define this, so that our students, when they graduate, have those skills that have been brought up here and will be brought other ideas and thoughts that will be brought up in other sessions, so that they're well prepared to have meaningful jobs and be successful in those jobs, as well as engaged citizens in a democracy. Thank you all very much. It was a great conversation. And thank you to our panelists.